Hi there, I'm Ophira Edut from the AstroTwins, and this is the Astrology of Business, Wealth, and Impact, a forecast for 2026 and beyond. I originally gave this talk at Summit Series in April 2026. It was based on a research chapter of the AstroTwins 2026 horoscope book, and I was frankly stunned by the impact that it had, the response I got, not just from people who were interested in astrology, but at Summit, where I gave it to a group of people who are impact investors, venture capitalists, change makers, founders. So I'm really excited to share this with you today. To introduce myself quickly for just meeting, I'm Ophira Edut. I am the co-founder with my twin sister, Tali Edut, of the AstroTwins, a brand reaching millions with astrology through our website, astrostyle.com. We have also been the official astrologers for Elle magazine since 2009, the authors of over 20 books, including the bestseller, The Astrology Advantage. Our books have been translated into 7 languages, and we are also the astrologers for celebrities, including Dua Lipa, Beyonce, Goldie Hawn, Charlie XCX. We've done readings for some fascinating people, and we've also worked with hundreds of executives and business owners to help them clarify their brands, find their purpose, harmonize their teams, and lead effectively. As business owners ourselves for over 30 years, what makes a company work, a brand thrive, a platform grow is one of our simultaneous fascinations. So we love looking at how the stars can be used in a practical way, or brought down to earth, as we like to say, to help guide people through life on this planet. And we shared our work at places like the Fast Company Innovation Festival, Chief, Soho House, the Milk and Global Conference with YPO, and all over the world. So I'm excited to delve into this topic with you. So what really moves the markets? Is it data and algorithms? Is it human emotion, societal trends? Or is it something cosmic? Well, maybe, just maybe, it's all of the above. So astrology and finance, interestingly, both forecast with cycles. Same method. We use patterns. Much like weather, we look at past patterns, see trends, and then put our best prediction or forecast out for how that may manifest in the future. I've always been interested in what's called mundane astrology, which is the astrology of the past. Most people think of astrology as a tool for predicting the future, but the past is also a great indicator. You can look back 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, 500 years ago and see things that maybe haven't happened since then, and look at the data that history shows us and go, what happened then? What's similar this time? What's different? How might I put together a picture of what could happen? For me, in March of 2025, my friend Mimi invited me to a Women's History Month event at the New York Stock Exchange that she was hosting, where a group of women rang the closing bell. As we were walking around on the floor with all the trades going on and the tickers, I had 2 thoughts. I thought, is this place haunted? Story for another time, but there are lots of books on that. But also, I just got really curious about the esoteric history of Wall Street. I knew that there had been forecasters and astrologers for many years, so I decided I was going to dive down that rabbit hole. So there were 3 women in particular who really stood out. It turns out that Wall Street has quite the spiritual and feminist backstory. Victoria Woodhull, the bewitching broker, Evangeline Adams, the Carnegie Hall astrologer, and Louise McWhirter, who wrote about the astrology of stock market forecasting. So Victoria Woodhull was a suffragist leader and spiritualist in the 19th century. In 1872, she became the first woman to run for U.S. president with Frederick Douglass. She was a free love advocate, a psychic, and an abolitionist. I mean, where have you been all my life, Victoria? And she and her sister, Tennessee Clay Flynn, became owners of Wall Street's first female-led stock brokerage with women investors and all. Their brokerage was backed by railroad and shipping tycoon Cornelius Vanderbilt, and he gave the sisters stock tips to help make their brokerage an instant success. But he had been coming to them for readings, and he was so impressed with their work that he decided to back their brokerage. And there it was, Victoria with her Scorpio moon, Cornelius with his Taurus moon, opposite moon signs, which often goes well together if you're an astrology person. Now, in the early 20th century, before the Great Depression, before the crash, there was Evangeline Adams, aka the stock market seer, or the Carnegie Hall astrologer. She was known for her wildly accurate predictions, and people would go to her back-to-back readings. She was so, fully booked all the time by some very impressive people. And she made predictions on all kinds of things. Now, it was not legal to do that. There were laws against fortune telling. But J.P. Morgan, the financier who needs no introduction, visited her yearly starting in his 60s, and even once invited her to go on an expedition with him on his ship to Egypt. He was a crystal collector and an Aries. She was an Aquarius, born on a lunar eclipse, interestingly. So J.P. Morgan, there's an urban legend saying, attributing a quote to him, that millionaires don't use astrology, but billionaires do. You've probably heard it before. Whether he said it or not, he did go to see her yearly. And if you read the book 1929 that came out in 2025 by Andrew Ross Sorkin about the whole lead up to the stock market crash, there's a whole section about Evangeline Adams and astrology in relation to the stock market then, and how she was in the Carnegie Hall lunchroom that was kind of where the who's who went. And she was actually in 1914 pulled into court because of this fortune teller law, but she ended up reading the judge's son's birth chart and being so accurate that he acquitted her and said that her work was on par with science. So go figure, she swayed a judge. Now, after the crash, people became obsessed, astrologers and non-astrologers in the 1930s, with figuring out what had caused that. And that's where we come to Louise McWhirter, whose work I'm going to focus on here, and W.D. Gann. Gann was a financial advisor who used astronomy, astrology, geometry, and time cycles. He hid the astrology part. They both had to kind of disguise their work. His book was called The Truth of the Stock Tape, and he had a daily stock forecast newsletter. But later it came out that he was using astrology. And Louise McWhirter, they both identified different planetary phases when the market would go up or down. But the one that really stood out to me in McWhirter's work was where she used the moon's north node as a predictor. Now, the north node and the south node, they're always in pairs of signs, opposite signs, are two mathematical points where the moon's orbit crosses the Earth's orbital plane, also known as the ecliptic. And it's associated with fate, destiny, karma, the south node with past lives, past lessons, and the north node with sort of this pull into this new energy. You have a north and a south node in your birth chart, but we also have a collective one in the current chart of the moment or moments in history. So Louise McWhirter, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, followed the cycles of the nodes. And with all the post-stock market crash curiosity, in her book, Theory of Stock Market Forecasting, she covers this. So Louise McWhirter pinpointed the North Node as a key indicator of market highs and lows. When the North Node was in Leo, which happens for about a year and a half every 18 and a half years, when it's in Leo, it's gold rush, speculative, prices are up often, or there's sort of this optimism in the air. And at the bottom of the cycle, 9.5 or so years later, the node is in Aquarius, the North Node, and prices tend to go down. The market consolidates according to her theory, or, laws get put into place. Some bureaucracy sometimes comes in, or we have to pay the piper for that Leo North Node speculation of the prior decade. So this is her cycle that got me super curious too. So every 18.6 years, just to recap that, the lunar north node returns to either Leo or Aquarius for a span of 18 months. So that means every 9.3 years, it's in one or the other. But it takes 18.6 years from Leo cycle to Leo cycle, or Aquarius cycle to Aquarius cycle. So the North Node is returning to Aquarius July 26th, 2026 until March 26th, 2028. And I'm recording this on May 25th of 2026. So it's about 2 months away at this recording. And people are wondering, are we headed for a correction? The last visit, which I'll cover some historical cycles, was from 2008 to 2009. So again, astrology and finance both forecast with cycles. So every 9.3 years, like I said, the North Node is either in Leo or Aquarius. Now, this happened to match a famous economist's research. Edward R. Dewey. He was anything but an astrologer. He was actually the chief economic analyst under Herbert Hoover. He worked in the U.S. Department of Commerce. And Hoover tasked him to find the cause of the Great Depression. What happened was he went out there and every economist ended up giving him a different answer. So he started what he called the Cycles Institute and did a deep dive of research into cycles across all kinds of sectors. And what he found was a repeating 9.2-year predictive cycles across agriculture, economics, geology, biology, sociology. Now, doesn't this look a little curious to you? The McWhirter Cycle, 9.3 years. The Dewey Cycle, 9.2 years. Pretty darn close, if not almost exact. Well, that really sparked my curiosity even more, because when you see something like that, you have to go, So are we now entering an Aquarius economic cycle with the North Node headed into Aquarius? Well, let's look back at history to test this theory out. I mean, it's been almost 100 years since she wrote her book. It was in 1938. So we have quite a few Leo Aquarius cycles we could look at to see if that happened. So here's how this works, the Leo Aquarius pendulum, before we get into that. When the North Node's in Leo, at the top of that cycle chart, optimism reigns, confidence inflates, there are speculative bubbles, and there's a gold rush mentality. If you think about Leo, it's the lion, it's confident, it believes in itself. Leo energy is all about just, going out and king, queen of the jungle, hunting, and knowing that you are large and in charge. It can make for inflated egos and confidence levels too. Now, Aquarius, by contrast, the energy reverses when the North Node is in Aquarius. The market calibrates. There's a sense of maybe austerity over excess, consolidation. Leo is a sign of the self. Aquarius is a sign of groups. So during Leo North Node times, we can be selfish. We can be greedy. We can think about how much we're going to get for ourselves. Whereas Aquarius is concerned about how is this going to impact society, the greater good, the community, the collective. Not everybody thinks that way. There are people who are greedy no matter where the North Node is, but that's the general energetic pull. During Aquarius, the economic cycle patterns tend toward consolidation and contraction. There are a lot of regulations and structures that get put in, I found. Social programs, a flattening of hierarchies. Leo is the king, the royal. Aquarius is the people, the sign of the people. So we don't want hierarchies in Aquarian times. There can be a simultaneous decentralization, even if there are a bunch of government offices that branch out, causes things to get scattered sometimes. Big government. There can be new currencies and commodities as a focus. Collective interests are prioritized. We become more communal. And Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, which is the planet of innovation and disruption, planet of the future and progress. So technology is often and innovation, a big theme as well. Here are a few celebrity examples just for fun to show you the personification. So Leo, self-focused, me and mine. It's protective, centralized, present. Leo's ruled by the heart. So we have Madonna, call her daddy Alex Cooper, J-Lo and Ben Affleck, Barack Obama, to name a few. And then Aquarius, the sign of groups and teams, the people, sharing, decentralized future. It's head over heart. So it tends to have kind of the iconoclastic, quirky, edgy, rebellious disruptors. Chris Rock, Carol G, Harry Styles, Megan Thee Stallion, some of our pop examples of the moment. So let's look at forecasting. Let's look to the past, find patterns, test the theory, and hypothesize. This all sounds fascinating, right? But our skeptical sides should be saying, all right, well, did this McWhirter cycle actually happen or not? Did it play out? Let's see. The gold rush mindset that is personified by Leo. Leo is actually the sign that rules gold. It is United States history. I traced back to the very beginning of this country's history, Jamestown, when 144 Englishmen arrived in Virginia looking for what else but gold in 1607, when the North Node was in Leo. They were overconfident and underprepared. They got there, they found no gold. One of the ships went off to Bermuda, and 80% of them died in the following winters. That were called the starving time. They didn't know anything about how to produce food. They were kind of finance bros of the 17th century, if you will, and they were completely unprepared for farming, feeding themselves, and surviving. It changed, however, when the North Node got to Aquarius, and John Smith, who was on one of the boats that had gone to one of the ships that had gone to Bermuda, found his way to Jamestown and figured out by working with the indigenous tribes how to grow a certain type of tobacco. And so that created the tobacco economy. So in Aquarius North Node, a system, a bureaucracy, and a consolidation. So tobacco ended up becoming the primary currency in the Virginia colony and created an export economy, but it was dependent on London for capital. So they were hoping to find some independence, but they ended up creating an import-export business. In 1617, with the North Node in Aquarius, 20,000 pounds of Virginia tobacco were shipped to England, and that amount had doubled by 1618. And during this Aquarius North Node time, there was expansion as well. So land was stolen from Native Americans, and the first enslaved Africans were brought over right after that in 1619. So the Aquarius North Node put a system in place, but one that was, a shameful stain on history. And this was the birth of an industry, which is very Aquarius, that used human capital and labor to sustain it. Now, this continued every decade, a Leo North Node and Aquarius North Node, one or the other, because not every 9.3 years we had that. But let's fast forward to 1775 and the American Revolution, which started. Now, war is sadly a time when a lot of money is made because we go into manufacturing of weapons and it mobilizes the economy. And often during a Leo North node, there's war funding and financing. It's very unfortunate. We have got to figure out another way on this planet. But I'm looking back at history. The Declaration of Independence uh, was signed the United States birthday, July 4th, 1776, which creates the chart of the United States, has a Leo North node in it. So our country was founded with the gold rush, speculative energy of a Leo North node, and it is proven to be part of the personality of what we call America to this day. Now, during that time, we also had our first failed currency. The Continental Congress issued a paper money called the Continental. It was not backed by gold or silver. And it was overprinted in that Leo North Node kind of way, counterfeited, which led to massive inflation. And it went out of print by 1779, which leads us to the next decade with an Aquarius North Node down cycle, 1784 to 1786. There was a post-war depression. There was a debt crisis, an overtaxing of citizens to make up for all the war debt. And that led to something called Shays Rebellion, when a group of pissed off soldiers who hadn't been paid and were being taxed on top of it, they attempted to overthrow the government. Well, along came George Washington and a few others who called for a stronger central government. There's that Aquarius, consolidation of power to prevent future overthrows. So we had a weak currency that when it went bust, with a weak government that was threatened by rightfully angry people and led to more protection for the government. Next decade, 1793 to 95, an upcycle with the Leo North Node back. That was when the US dollar was minted. So the US dollar was actually birthed with a Leo North Node too. There was a shipping and banking boom, and urban centers like New York and Philadelphia began fueling commercial and trade markets. So up, down, up, down. We have that in the late 1700s. Now let's fast forward to the California Gold Rush of 1849, Leo North Node. No further explanation needed. And cleanup time in the next decade, the Panic of 1857. So it was right before the Aquarius North Node of 1859 to 60. We had the first worldwide economic crisis because banks, merchants, and farmers had made risky investments in the prior Leo-fueled boom, prior decade. And funny enough, this is again so on the nose. A ship that was filled with gold called the SS Central America sank in 1857 while banks were waiting for gold to back the currency. And that had a global impact, which was amplified due to the telegraph, where the word spread, the panic spread. People were just freaking out. The economy didn't fully recover until the Civil War the next decade. So now let's hop into more modern history. The three modern Leo to Aquarius cycles I'm going to talk about. The Roaring Twenties to the Great Depression was a Leo to Aquarius cycle. Bretton Woods, when we got the gold standard, to Nixon shock when he ended it, that was a Leo to Aquarius cycle. And then Dotcom mania of 1999 to the Great Recession of 2008 and 9. All right, those Roaring 20s, so much fun. The flappers, the cars. 1924 to 25, we saw the first consumer credit boom when installment payments were introduced for cars, appliances, and even stocks. So electricity, mass production, radio, autos, and appliances all became a thing. Urban life expanded. Women had a lot more freedom. They had been spending, I believe, up to 20 hours a week on laundry alone. The advent of the washing machine set women free. And by 1929, 60% of purchases were made with installments. People would put down a little money and get their car or get their refrigerator and hopefully be able to pay it off. What actually happened was something called bank runs or panics. People would overborrow, the market would go down, people would freak out, go withdraw all their money from the banks. The bank didn't have enough in reserve, so there would be bank failures because all the money had been taken out and they had nothing left to back it up. There was no gold standard or insurance of any kind. So that is attributed to causing the Great Depression as well. Next decade, 1933 to 35, the Aquarius North Node. Right then, an Aquarius by the name of FDR, you might have heard of him, became the president. And he immediately put in the New Deal and the Emergency Banking Act, as well as something called the Glass-Steagall Act, which created a separation between investment banking and regular consumer banking as a protection. The FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, was created because prior to the FDIC, 1/3 of banks failed every year from those bank runs and panics. So he instituted something that brought stability back and made it harder for people to just freak out and the market to go wild. Fun fact, in the early 1900s, there was almost a crash, but JP Morgan personally ended up bailing out the banks. So FDR's work was really important here. Well, World War II coincided with the next Leo North Node cycle from 1942 to 44. And there was a big boom of the economy from all the production. So in 1944, the Bretton Woods Conference brought 44 nations together, representatives, to come up with a currency standard that would protect banks worldwide because the US economy impacted the global economy. So what they decided was that the US dollar would become the world's stabilizing currency and would be backed by gold. So it was pegged to gold at the price of $35 an ounce, and it became the backing currency for world currencies. And that lasted from 1944 to 71, spawned by the Leo North Node. We had a couple more cycles in there. And in our 2026 horoscope book, we go through all of the cycles in between. But along came the 1970 to 72 Aquarius North Node, when the gold standard gave way to Nixon shock. In 1971, Nixon decided to end the gold standard. The US had printed more dollars than there was gold to back it to fund the Vietnam War. So he pulled them apart, and currency became fully what's called fiat, which is flexible, out in the wild. The market forces determined versus gold. This is one of the many things that Richard Nixon did that was highly controversial and has shaped the world and the economy we live in today. And it happened during Aquarius North Node time. Let's hop ahead a few more cycles to 1999 when we had a Leo North Node and the big dot-com boom. I was in my mid-20s then, so I experienced that firsthand. I suddenly tripled my salary, left magazine publishing, and went and worked at a dot-com startup and saw them burn through venture capital, expand from 50 employees to 400. We worked in this big warehouse in a building called the Star at Lehigh building. It's lofts on the West Side Highway in New York. And Um, we had 2 bathrooms, single person bathrooms for 400 people, and an elevator to get up to, I think it was the 12th floor, that was hand cranked. That was among the many mishaps of that dot-com boom. Now, something related to another McWhirter cycle happened, though. Bill Clinton was president, a Leo. It's interesting. Sometimes the president has reflected the nodes. So FDR and Aquarius, and he was actually president through both an Aquarius North Node cycle and a Leo North Node cycle, because he was a president for 4 terms. Bill Clinton was there. He signed an act called the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. I hope I'm saying that right. What it did was repealed key protections of FDR's 1933 Glass-Steagall Act. So the Glass-Steagall Act, as a reminder, separated investment banking from consumer and commercial to make it safer so that the speculative investors couldn't pull all the money out and destabilize everyday people's finances. So Bill Clinton said, you know what? Let's just remove some of those protections so we can stimulate the economy a little bit. So that deregulation birthed what were called too big to fail institutions, ones that ended up requiring bailouts at the next Aquarius North Node cycle, and made way for high-risk ventures like Lehman Brothers and their subprime mortgages, which led to a crisis at the next Aquarius North Node cycle. Let's go there. So 2008 to 10, we had the Great Recession. So December 2007 until 2009, the North Node was an Aquarius. Sorry for the typo on my slide. But the Great Recession of 2008 happened when Lehman Brothers, who had played around with their derivatives in that Leo North Node window created for them, well, they did some fancy math that didn't math. They went bankrupt along with many other banks, created a subprime mortgage crisis, the housing market crashed, and there were massive bank bailouts required. Obama became president. He was inaugurated in 2009 toward the end of this Aquarius North Node cycle. So in 2010, that's why I have that number there, right after the North Node cycle, he created the Dodd-Frank Consumer Protection Act to shield taxpayers from future corporate bailouts. So here we have an Aquarius North Node cycle with regulations put in again to clean up the mess of a Leo North Node cycle. Now, I did say that new currencies often arise during an Aquarius North Node cycle, sometimes Leo as well. So this one was digital currency, which is the realm of Aquarius, the ruler of technology. So the first Bitcoin was minted January 3rd, 2009, close to the end of that North Node and Aquarius cycle, and the cryptocurrency revolution began. And now here we are, headed into our next Aquarius North Node cycle. So what's next? What is ahead? Is it going to be universal basic assets and income? Is it poly market, AI, quantum computing, humanoid robots? All those futuristic Aquarius North Node ideas are entering our reality as we head into this next cycle. So we're calling 2026 to 28, this next Aquarius North Node cycle, the Great Compression. We had the Great Depression, with the Great Recession. Now we may have the Great Compression. Quantum computing, compressed services like universal basic income or assets, childcare and benefits, everything's getting consolidated. Budgets are shrinking. There's concerns of stagflation when you have high unemployment and high inflation at the same time. And workforce is being compressed into AI agents. Let's just page back, though, to the Leo cycle that set the stage for that. The last North Node in Leo, 2017 to 18. That was when we had a crypto bubble. We had the first ICOs, initial crypto offerings, like an IPO when a stock goes public. We had a 2017 price surge, then a crash in January 2018. Major machine learning strides were made then. So that was also a really big time for tech giants. So the very first release of early agents and training models for OpenAI, Facebook, and Microsoft came out. Interestingly, we had the first Trump presidency. He, like FDR, is going through two cycles. His first presidency was Leo North Node, so he had the halo effect of the gold rush, but now he's steering into an Aquarius North Node. So the stage may be set for the 2026 AI maturity phase. Already the rumblings, the backlash against AI is alive and well. People who spoke at college graduations for 2026 graduating classes and were pro AI or cheering for it got booed audibly by the graduating classes. What's coming out now, too, is all these AI startups were funded by venture capital. So investors were subsidizing the cost of things like ChatGPT that people could get for $20 a month just to get it off the ground. Well, as that investment capital is drying up, being used up, we shall see if the costs remain $20. People are predicting the cost of using AI is going to go up. Now, to say nothing of the horrible data centers that are taking land and water and power and resources and creating pollution and noise and citizens having to fight David and Goliath style against these huge tech companies building data centers. Just today, before this recording, it came out that Uber was saying they had burned through all their agentic AI credits, their whole budget for the year already, and it's only the end of May. So the money they hope to save by firing part of their workforce and replacing them with AI agents is not cost effective. They're just trading tokens for humans. So one of the also interesting things about OpenAI, so in 2015, right before this Leo cycle, in one of the mid cycles, which Louise McWhirter identifies when the North nodes are in Taurus and Scorpio. So at that time, OpenAI was created as a nonprofit with Sam Altman, Elon Musk, and it was meant to be something positive for humanity, to give back as they develop this machine learning. Well, greed set in during this Leo North Node cycle. And in 2019, Sam Altman became the CEO of OpenAI, made it parts of it carved out for profit. And here we have him and Elon Musk all tied up in this legal battle that just ended. So at the cusp of the Aquarius North Node, SpaceX is planning an IPO on June 12th, which is Elon Musk's company, which includes XAI. And some people are saying that he just staged that court case just to keep Sam Altman tied up so he couldn't create something to compete with him. This is where we find ourselves on May 25th, 2026. So it'll be interesting to see how this all develops. But I'm going to share some of my forecasts. So is this the dawning of the age of Aquarius? Because for the first time since the late 1700s, Pluto is also an Aquarius. So 2027 is a year that's cited in a lot of prophecies, 26, 27. In human design, it's a new 412-year cycle. The cross of planning, as it's called, that began 1615 is ending on February 15th, 2027. The Hopi prophecies, Nostradamus, Edgar Cayce. There are what are called the Yuga cycles, the Kali Yuga. Those are all speaking of this. A comet called 3I Atlas passed through our solar system that is related to the telepathy tapes. There's a deep rabbit hole to go down here. And in 2027, we're going to have a total solar eclipse next summer over Luxor, Egypt, the Valley of the Kings, over Hatshepsut's pyramid and all those temples. We will be there. There's a lot happening right now. But on the topic of the Great Compression, like I said, everything from information to power and wealth is getting condensed into tighter, faster, and more centralized systems. So what could be next for AI? Let's go into a little forecasting, future casting. This is all my own and my sister's speculation. So take it for entertainment purposes only. But these are the things that could happen. I'm casting my bet as much as anyone else might. So there could be more AI regulations. It could be less Wild West, likely because of investors wanting their money back, not because they care about the planet, sadly. And AI may be becoming a feature, not really the main event. One of the things that was, I remember in the dot-com era, everything was hyperlinks and World Wide Web and the internet. And it's like, okay, whatever. It's just online. So, one of the things in 2025 and early 2026, everyone was like, it's AI powered until the backlash began. So we've always had artificial intelligence and machine learning and technology embedded in things. So the hype was just what it was, hype. So will we have agents and robots as colleagues, partners, and coexisting with us? Uranus is also in Gemini now since April 25th, 2026 until 2033. And I think the first humanoid robots are being released in China to help with, I don't know, some household task or something. They're still working out the kinks. Crypto, blockchain, and money. Well, we're going to see Bitcoin perhaps coming of age, DeFi versus CeFi. That's decentralized versus centralized finance. So governments may adopt blockchain, and we may see something like more stable coins. So the decentralized finance, the crypto that's out in the wild, not backed by anything, will maybe be regulated more because of how Aquarius North Node cycles work. There may be a quantum computing disruption that changes the way digital currency is created. A lot of it, including I think Sam Altman had his WorldCoin. It was tied to surveillance, retina scanning, that kind of thing, the real ID. So we're just today also, it's Memorial Day. Several tech executives, C-suite executives were sworn into military positions. So we're probably going to see defense, surveillance, and digital currency and government all in bed together. Digital currency could become the new gold standard over the next decade, and maybe some solar powered mining, mining of Bitcoin used up a lot of energy. Data mining, data centers, energy, I'll get to that in a minute, is definitely a big issue here. So energy, climate, and sustainability, AI and blockchain innovation could be used to track energy usage, prevent supply chain fraud, fairly distribute food and resources. I mean, if used correctly, it could help the increasing populations, the increasing urbanizations that need food and water. We do have a super El Nino coming this summer, and there are similarities in the charts to that time. But Aquarius is an air sign, so wind power, clean wind power, could be something that becomes one of our energy sources, clean energy sources. And Leo, which is a fire sign ruled by the sun, solar power. So our next Leo North Node is next decade, but investments can take up to a decade to really bear fruit, especially with startups that often have no money and options vest over several years. Investing in something that tracks with the next nodal cycle a decade later could be a wise idea. Check with your financial advisor. I'm an astrologer. I'm just speculating based on the astrological cycles and history. So that choice is for you to make with a professional. Communal living is also an Aquarius hallmark. Sharing, we could see communal spaces, new housing models, some local energy solutions like microgrids, where a small area shares a power source or a mini data center. I think that's already being created by NVIDIA, I believe, the chip maker, semiconductors. So, to prevent these terrible data centers taking over cities and destroying people's dreams and hopes and lives, smaller grids that are shared and run by the people could be a solution. Water distribution is also going to be something. Aquarius is the water bearer. So it's pouring out the urn of water, and water shortages are absolutely a threat of this next Aquarius North Node cycle with all the data centers. People in Georgia were reporting low water pressure, brown water, even needing to shower with bottled water. We do not have an infinite water supply. So, an El Nino, which can cause high temperatures, droughts, and storms. Aquarius was one of the, Uranus storm gods in mythology. And so we really do need to be mindful in this next cycle of, our relationship with Earth and her natural resources. There could be a rising trend of fractional farm and land ownership, that communal Aquarius, the cost of living being really high right now, buying a share of a property, living communally, sharing some of the food production, the kibbutz model. Our father grew up on a kibbutz, and it's very Aquarian. With Pluto and Aquarius till 2044, we can expect to see more of that. More compounds. For investors, founders, and builders, this Aquarius North Node cycle could be a time to build communities and ecosystems rather than platforms. Leo, like I showed earlier, is a sign of celebrity. It wants the spotlight, it loves to shine. And, we have some great Leo performers like Madonna or Dua Lipa. Robert Redford was a Leo. They pull that spotlight to them and they beam it out like a lighthouse to everyone else. And that Leo energy is beautiful to be in, but Leo being the opposite sign of Aquarius, this is not the time of the Leo. It's time of Aquarius. So focusing on, if you're someone who has a membership community or fans or readers or an audience, really focus on being shoulder to shoulder with them, being a role model and a leader, but not above them. We don't need gurus during this time. We want allies and the leader or the celebrity, quote unquote. That's a word that's going to go out of fashion during this Aquarius North Node period. You already see a lot of backlash. The Met Gala of 2026 on this cusp of the Aquarius North Node. Just about every celebrity who attended got lost points with the people and many of their fans. And in Aquarius North Node style, Jeff Bezos, who's a Capricorn, and his wife, Sagittarius wife, Lauren Sanchez Bezos, they funded it. Tables went up the cost of tickets by thousands of dollars, sponsored by tech companies. It was, fashion is art was the theme, but it was protested by Amazon workers who don't even work uh, for fair wages or in conditions where they even have bathrooms that they can use on break. So all of the ugly side of technology, the billionaires who don't pay taxes, which, by the way, is an outgrowth of something else that happened in the last Leo North Node, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which Trump put in, which gave all the billionaires and their companies reprieve from paying taxes, and was sold and marketed to the public like it was the greatest thing and it was going to help regular everyday employees. It did not, but it led to companies like Amazon not paying taxes and saving billions. And here we find ourselves with Jeff Bezos and the Met Gala. I just saw The Devil Wears Prada 2 last night. We'll be hearing more about that for sure. The first Gen Alpha graduates are actually going to enter college and then shortly after that, the workforce in 2028. So, right a couple months after the North Node finishes its next lap through Aquarius, they will be graduating, my daughter being one of them. She's class of 2028. So who knows what kind of world they will be inheriting and bringing us into. The bad actors, we may see some of those agents and robots gone rogue, cartels and energy black market distributors if energy becomes too expensive. Prediction market scams, poly market is already a thing that's really growing. People investing and betting on whether an event will happen, from someone winning an Oscar to the Strait of Hormuz being reopened to world events. And a lot of people are making lots of money on that and losing lots of money on that. There we'll probably see more data tampering and surveillance, and the climate destruction has got to be addressed during this Aquarius North Node time. So let's keep eyes on that next Leo economic cycle too. That's from 2036 to 37. One of my astro predictions is for a solar gold rush. So if you're curious about that sector, it'd be an astrologically favorable time now to start looking into it, keeping up on the developments of it. You know, we're on the verge of 3 IPOs of tech companies, Anthropic, OpenAI, and SpaceX, as we head into the Aquarius North Node. And if indeed they do go public, they're going to need lots of power. And, you know, Elon Musk is talking about putting data centers in space versus on this planet. So what's going to power those? What's going to power our lives? I think it was Paris just mandated solar panels on all the roofs of a whole area of buildings. So that is sort of a bell for me of what could be ahead. So what role could you play as the invitation? You know, it's easy to get overwhelmed as we think about all of these things, as we think about where the world is headed. And, you know, it can seem really scary and overwhelming. Everything is unknown and moving so fast. We're having what's called capability shock happening now, where the speed of innovation and technology is exceeding our capability. Shout out to our friend Tess McCarthy, who has an Aquarius North Node, for introducing me to that term. We have to remember, why are we inventing all of this stuff? And there's supposedly a whole depopulation crisis, which is associated with Aquarius. Well, if the cost of living exceeds what humanity can keep up with, if we don't innovate something new, we will have a depopulation, birth rate crisis, or mortality. You know, just it's time for us to come together in this Aquarian age way as we move into this next human design cycle for 400 years. It's called the Sleeping Phoenix era. What's coming up is this adjustment, this period of shift is moving us toward a time where autonomy and individuality, along with coexistence and collaboration, have to find a way to simultaneously happen. They may seem like opposites, but they're not. It's time for us to figure out a way where everything from relationships to family to education to housing, we're in the middle of a tight housing market. Like all of these structures that we built in this planning era of human design for the last 412 years are crumbling, decaying, not serving us. We've evolved, and the systems we created may not be enough to sustain that. So, in this time of innovation, in this Aquarian economic cycle, I want to encourage you to tap into your innovation and the power of many. Don't let the fear and the illusion overtake you. These astrological cycles have reliably repeated every 18.6 years, every 9.3 years. And it's an invitation also for us to remember what matters, our humanity, our creativity. AI can only search and reference what already exists, what's already been invented. If human beings stop inventing and innovating and creating and making things that only humans can, then these AI vectors have nothing to reference. So please hang on to your humanity and let's do this together. If you enjoyed this video, I would love if you'd leave a comment, a like, if you subscribe to the channel. You can follow us at astrostyle.com or AstroTwins on Instagram. Thank you so much.